So the MacBook Neo has been making waves recently as an actual budget product from Apple, and one that's actually priced kind of competitively in the budget laptop segment. But here's the thing, it is still an Apple product. It still has some very strange spec choices, and of course you still have to go out of your way to install an actually usable operating system on it. So there have to be some good regular Windows laptops that you can get for the price, right? So today we'll be seeing exactly what we can get. So that we're all on the same page, let's go over exactly what you get with the brand new MacBook. It does start at $600, though that's the cheaper of the two models, with the other one costing $700. When it comes to performance, it's nothing too impressive, given how it isn't powered by Apple's M series chips, rather the A series one, which they primarily use for the iPhone and iPad, with it using the A18 Pro chip specifically, the same one used in the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Now keep in mind there are some differences between the two. Obviously the biggest one is that in this form factor, the chip will obviously have some additional cooling to take advantage of, and sure, while that is in fact true, there's only so much difference that it will make for a low TDP CPU anyway, and this thing doesn't even come with a fan. But also the A18 Pro in the iPhone is also technically different than the one found in this MacBook, given how the iPhone one actually has one additional GPU core, while on the MacBook Neo you have 6 CPU cores and 5 GPU cores. Then there's obviously the thing that most people have been memeing about, the I/O, with just 3 ports in total, 2 USB Type-C and 1 audio jack. Of the 2 Type-C ports, one of them is 10 gigabit and the other is still Gen 2, so that's 480 megabits per second. Now that in itself wouldn't be too bad, having a single slow port for charging would be fine. However, for some reason Apple put it as the innermost port, so while people usually use the outermost port to charge the laptops, plus because they're not even labeled it anyway, it's very easy for people to plug in a charger to the incorrect one, and even then there's only so much expansion you can do with that 10 gigabit port if you do want to just attach plenty of adapters or dongles of any kind. Another thing that's going to be very much affecting performance is the fact that this thing has a mere 8 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory, and of course it is not upgradable whatsoever. So what exactly is the difference between the two different priced models? Well, one of them has a mere 256 gigabytes of storage, once again not expandable, while the other has 512 gigs and also Touch ID as a bonus. With all of that established, let's see what we can actually buy. I said a price range is $500 to $700, just in case we can get something that's actually a lot better, but also even up to $100 cheaper than the MacBook. And obviously the first one we have here is already a major improvement in so many ways. This Acer Aspire Vero right here, it's 16 inches, well almost 16 inches when compared to the 13 inch. Sure, its CPU is kind of old at this point, using a Ryzen 7730U, but it has quadrupled the memory and quadrupled the storage of at least the basic configuration. And I can very much guarantee you that both that memory and storage are actually upgradable in this model if you wanted to change it up in the future. Granted, annoyingly, it is just DDR4 memory, so it is going to be slightly slower, but still, it is quadruple what you're getting. And for the people saying that, oh, because Apple's more optimized, 8 gigs is like 16 gigs on Windows. No. That's not how it works. Sure, optimization can go a long way, but there's only so much you can do to make 8 gigabytes somewhat acceptable in the year 2026. Pretty much the only disappointment about this laptop right here is just the display. Sure, it's 16 inches, but it's only 1080p. Speaking of, what kind of screen do you even have on MacBook? Apple, being Apple, isn't really that descriptive about what you get, just saying it's a liquid retina display as always, but what exactly does that mean? Like, what's the resolution? What's the refresh rate? Is it HDR compatible? Is it OLED? Well, looking deeper into it, we can see that it is a standard IPS panel with a resolution of 2408 by 1506, a maximum refresh rate of 60 Hz, and a peak brightness of 500 nits, so while the resolution itself is pretty decent for a laptop, the other specs aren't that impressive. Even if I myself would happily take a high resolution over high refresh rate any day of the week. But still, it is obviously much better than the 1920 by 1080 screen we have here, and I can also guarantee you that the color accuracy is also much higher on the MacBook than on any kind of laptop like this from Acer. And then just look how much additional I/O you have here when compared to the MacBook. You have dedicated Ethernet and HDMI, 2 additional Type-A, Type-C on this one end, and on the other end you have a combo audio jack and additional Type-A. Granted, just the single Type-C port is kind of disappointing on this thing, But at least that one Type-C port you do get is Thunderbolt 4, so that's 40 gigabits per second. So again, quadruple that what the fast Type-C port can do on the MacBook Neo. Now, if you're unhappy with an internal display, then you can always just use an external one on the laptop. But again, you'll be kind of limited with that on the MacBook Neo, given how, once again, because of the slow USB, any external display will be capped at just 4K 60Hz. While with the HDMI 2.1 present on this one, you can get away with connecting something much better if you want to. But what if we want something that's really going to be able to match the quality of that screen that Apple managed to put in that thing? Well, there are some options here, but probably the best one, just looking at what kind of CPU we're getting, is this one right here, once again from Acer. So this is the Acer Aspire Vero, again 16 inches, and while the CPU it's using is still a couple of generations old at this point, and when comparing scores, it is relatively close to what you're gonna get on the A18 Pro. And again, that's just looking kind of at the raw performance numbers of the chip itself. Things like just the additional memory is also going to go a long way in increasing its performance. And while here you get just 16 gigabytes, it is actually DDR5. Plus you also get downgraded to a 512 gigabyte SSD, but the biggest advantage of this one is just the display. The 2560 by 1600, that is what we are after right here. Another advantage of having the slightly newer CPU is also the battery life. And then the I/O. Just look at this I/O, guys. 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, so that's 2 40 gigabit per second ports right there, HDMI 2.1 and a USB Type A port there, and an additional Type A port on the other side, plus an audio jack. And okay, people are probably going to argue that what kind of expandability people need at $600, and while true, that is maybe a case for quite a few potential users of the MacBook Neo. If you then want to try and do literally anything else with your device and you see that you don't have enough ports for everything, then you might need to buy a whole new laptop just to get stuff done. And if you do need to connect extra devices while you are on a budget, then you are going to be paying a lot more for a kind of hub that will be able to meet your demands. And of course, if you're the kind of customer that is looking for a $600 laptop, more of a budget offering where every single dollar matters to you, then you probably don't want to be spending extra money on an I/O hub when something like this provides additional I/O for the exact same price. So while there are clearly laptops at this price point that are able to beat out a MacBook Neo in most areas, it's also not all areas. As you saw, there aren't that many choices for laptops with newer CPUs that are really able to just completely run away from the A18 Pro. And it's not just a Newegg thing. On Amazon, it's pretty much the same story. Do keep in mind that the additional memory will also go a long way in making these older chips also more competitive when compared to what the MacBook Neo has to offer. So it is a very, very interesting battle in this budget laptop range right now. So I want to know what exactly you would go for. Let me know down in the comments below. And if you have found any additional laptops that could potentially challenge the MacBook Neo, again, let me know. And while the MacBook Neo could be of dubious value, our Patreon is always worth it, so make sure to check it out. Plus, huge thanks to Gavin Burns, Justin Rage, Ella Roniak, Balash Voka, another pseudonym, Meg Sumner, Shane Allcroft, and Mason Magruder. But anyway, that's it, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then remember to subscribe, like, whatever, and I'll see you all whatever I make next. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.